Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
This is KRWG Public Media, TV, radio, online, news that matters. Now, across the Mesilla Valley and the borderland, the stories that shape our community. From the KRWG Broadcast Center at New Mexico State University, this is Newsmakers.
Hello and welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Anthony Moreno. Residents in the Village of Ruidoso have been hit hard by flash flooding since the South Fork and Salt fires impacted the area in June, leaving 2 dead and many structures damaged in the community and surrounding areas. Joining us now to share an update about how the community has been impacted and is working to recover is Carrie Gladden, Public Information Officer for the Village of Ruidoso. Carrie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Anthony.
I'd like to just start off with just asking you, how are you doing?
Doing good. We've been at this now. I think today is like day 36. And so it's been a long month and a long haul, but we're doing good and we're hanging in there. We're pretty resilient down here. So that certainly helps.
I mentioned, flash flooding impacting the area right now with the burn scars that are in the area. Are you in a situation where anytime you get significant rainfall, you probably are going to be dealing with flash flooding?
Yes, we are. The fact that burn scars go with fires, and so we're going to be looking at dealing with flash flooding for the foreseeable future. We can do a lot of stuff to mitigate it after we get through the monsoons this year, but that will go into place for next year, and we're going to have it for several years to come.
How has the flash flooding impacted the infrastructure in the area so far?
It has, a couple of our bridges have been compromised, and so of course that you deal with people being displaced from their homes, unable to get back to their homes after these events. We've had lots of pipes and water pipes and gas lines that have been ripped up during the flood events, and so it's once it happens, it's sending the crews in and getting them repaired as best you can and try to get them to hold for the next event.
Can you share with us an estimated number about just how many people have been impacted with their homes being damaged or perhaps even lost?
In the county, we had 1,588 structures that were damaged during the fires. And of course, not all of those are primary residents. Some of those are outbuildings, sheds, but we do know that about 1,330 of them were primary residents. And then with the flood, we have an additional about 430 that made it through the fires, but are then impacted by the floods.
Now, with the flooding that's happened since the fires have hit the area, can you share with us just how many water rescues have been needed?
We've probably had well over 100 over all of the events, and a lot of them are people who are trying to get out of their homes, that once they get outside and start trying to do it, they see how fast the water's coming and that they can't get out. And then there are cases like that where if the swiftwater rescue teams determine that it's better for the individuals to stay where they're at and shelter in place, they will have them do that. And if not, then they work to get them out of there.
So President Biden has declared a disaster declaration for New Mexico for those impacted in the area by the fires and the flooding. Can you give us an idea about just what sort of federal help is on the ground there and available?
Sure. We've got FEMA, of course, is here. The National Guard is here. The United States Public Health Service, the EPA, USDA. We've got, you name it, we pretty much have them here on the ground helping us with this effort.
Now, it was reported that FEMA brought in trailers to the area. Can you confirm that and just give us an idea about how many are available for folks?
They did. The night after the evacuation, we were, putting into place where we were going to put these people when they came back to Ruidoso and if they found that their homes were unlivable. And so the state and the National Guard brought in, they're basically semi-trailers that have been converted into housing pods, they call them. And they'll sleep anywhere from 6 to 3 to 2 to 1 person. And those are set up out at the White Mountain Relief Center. And they have the Red Cross is out there providing them with 3 meals a day. They've got bathroom facilities, shower facilities, laundry facilities. And so we've got 500 beds in that relief center.
Now, there's also some disaster centers set up in the area. Can you share with us like where exactly those are, where folks can walk in and get the help they need?
Sure. We have a disaster recovery center that's set up at 237 Service Road, which is at the Horton Complex. And FEMA is there. Lots of insurance companies are there. And so people can go there, do their right of entry forms, put their application in for FEMA, speak to someone from FEMA. And then there's also one that was just opened at the Angus Church of the Nazarene, which is just down the hill from us, but it's in the county. So it makes it easier for county people that live out in the county to get to that location.
How long do folks have to actually take advantage of the federal assistance that is available?
I know the FEMA application deadline is August 19th. So we're busy messaging residents here to make sure if they are going to need FEMA help, that they have all of their information in by the 19th of August.
Now, what about the state help that is available as well? Can you share with us about how New Mexico has stepped in and provided resources?
Sure. At the most recent special session that the governor called, there was a bill. It was the only thing that came out of that special session that was passed for $70 million. And that is it's not just for Ruidoso and Lincoln County. It's also for Otero County, where the Mescalero Apache Reservation is, Lincoln County, and then the counties up north that are still dealing with the aftermath of the Calf Canyon Hermit's Peak fires. And so that 70 million is going to be split up between all of those entities, and how it's going to be split up, we don't have details yet. We just know that that money has been set aside.
The South Fork and Salt fires burned thousands of acres in the area. Can you share with us a little bit about what made these fires so devastating compared to fires perhaps of the past?
Sure. This was, having been a longtime resident of this area, I can tell you, and having spent my childhood here, and that this was always the scenario that everybody warned about, was if a fire started in the Upper Canyon. And that's what happened. And because the way that it's positioned, it has the potential to just burn right down into the town. And so we had that instance start up. And then at the same time, we had the Salt fire, which was on the other side of us. So at the point that we decided to evacuate the community, we were surrounded on all but one side with fire, and hence the evacuation, with the only route out being to Roswell.
When the fires were first reported, how was the communication between your village and surrounding communities, the Mescalero Apache Reservation, federal officials, state officials? How would you say that communication was?
I would say it was excellent. We were able to, using a variety of warning systems, from our outdoor sirens to the iPause alerts, and we also have a reverse 911 system here in Ruidoso. And between using all of those, the county also has a reverse 911 system. And so we were able to get word out quickly to our residents, and then also to reach out to Roswell and communities beyond that. Roswell certainly stepped up and was a key player in this. By the time our people started arriving down there, they had shelters set up. They had, food. They had donations, everything that our people needed. And they continued to show them that hospitality for a week before we were able to, lift the evacuation notice and let people back into their homes.
So right now, what seems to be the immediate needs for a lot of folks who have returned to Ruidoso?
The immediate needs are a lot of help with cleanup, with debris cleanup. And that includes fire debris as well as flood debris. And as you can imagine, they're two very different things. Since we had so many structures burned, there's a lot of properties that it's just a pile. And so, but you can't, insurance has to be involved. You have to, if you're going to rebuild there, the EPA has to come in and clear your site. And by clear, I mean, they have to look at it and say that there are no hazardous materials present. Once they give their approval, then you can officially start to remove your debris. And not every place that you can discard your debris. Not every place takes fire debris and natural flood debris. There are a lot of separate places where you have to take your flood debris here, your fire debris here. So it's a complicated scenario. And then on top of that, just the flood debris, the messiness of that, just the, several feet of mud that are in a lot of these homes. It's just very, very intensive.
For anybody or any organization who wants to help residents in Ruidoso and your village, what do you say to them on how they can help?
We have had a tremendous outpouring of goods and material goods from locals plus communities around the state and the region. And what we are asking people to do is contribute monetarily to the Community Foundation of Lincoln County. It's a 501c3 nonprofit here in Ruidoso. And during the McBride fire a couple of years ago, they set up what they call the Shelter Fund. And all of the donations that went into the Shelter Fund, they distributed 100% of that to people that were directly affected by the McBride fire. So they've continued that shelter fund, and now we're asking that people contribute monetarily to the shelter fund. And again, they've already handed out close to $1 million directly to people who lost their homes in the flood or the fire. Before people were even allowed back, they were out at the shelters in Roswell handing out $100 gift cards for gas and groceries to the people that were in the shelters. And so it's just a very unique and wonderful foundation that we have here in the community that does amazing help for people.
Now, investigators are looking at the causes of these fires. They've mentioned that the South Fork fire, they believe, was caused by lightning. The FBI, it's been reported, the FBI believes that 2 people may be responsible for igniting the salt fire. We're still waiting for more information on that. What does the village stand on, after learning about where the investigation is right now? Is there any frustration?
No, because I think we all know, along, with our partners at the Mescalero Apache tribe, at the county, Ruidoso Downs, and us, we understand that these things take time. And yes, everybody wants to know answers right away in this day and age. And sometimes that's just not possible. And so, we trust we're all in this together. And we trust that the agencies that are in charge of the investigation, which include FBI and BIA and numerous other agencies, we're confident that that whatever their findings are, that they have the evidence to support it, and we support that.
We're running out of time with you, but I do have one more question that I'd like to ask, and that is, in conversations with officials at the village and your partners in communities surrounding the area, was there anything that you really took away from this disaster and experience that you think we need to do a better job of preparing for in case this happens again?
I think the one thing that I have taken away from it is, and this falls on me as well as it does any individual here in the community, is, we hear all the time about have a plan, have a go bag, know what you're going to take, and be prepared so that if you get moved through the steps on ready, set to go, that you have everything you need, and you're not trying to, run around and figure out what you need to be gone for several days, or the stuff that you want to take from your house. And, we've heard stories of people that once they got the go order, it took them almost 2 hours to get out onto the road. And although we had 2 fatalities in the fire, we are incredibly grateful that between the fire event and the flood, that we did not have more people that, have been hurt or, even suffered fatalities. And so I think that's the one thing that I can, say that everybody needs to take to heart is when officials are telling you to go and go now. Don't try to protect your property. Don't try to gather your belongings if you haven't up until that point. Just hit the road and make sure you get you and your family to safety.
Carrie Gladden is the Public Information Officer for the Village of Ruidoso. Carrie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Anthony.
Moving on, conservation groups are speaking out against a decision by federal officials to not release a young female wolf that has captured headlines. Here to share more about this issue is Chris Smith, Wildlife Program Director with Wild Earth Guardians. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Great to be back. Thanks for having me, Anthony.
Let's start off by learning a little bit more about this wolf, Asha, who has gained a lot of attention. Can you share with us Asha's story?
I can share as much as I know. And for a wolf, we actually know quite a bit about Asha. Most wolves are pretty reclusive and secretive, but Asha we know a little bit about. In 2023, Asha twice crossed this kind of arbitrary political boundary, which is Interstate 40 from the Gila, south of Interstate 40, into northern New Mexico. In January of 2023, she went up into the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, which is near where I live, near Santa Fe. She ventured up to the Taos area and eventually was captured and relocated back down south. And then later that year, in October and November, she again wandered north, this time into the Jemez Mountains, a little bit further west, but also in northern New Mexico, and hung out near the Valles Caldera National Preserve, which is really good wolf habitat. She was there for a couple weeks and then again was captured by state and federal authorities, and this time taken into captivity, where she has sat since then. Asha is a young female wolf. She's of breeding age, and federal and state officials hope that by keeping her captive with a couple of male wolves, she would breed and have pups. That did not happen, and that is the reason that officials are now giving for keeping Asha captive, which is disappointing and upsetting to the conservation community and I think animal lovers as a whole.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit more, Chris. You've been quoted as saying that you feel Asha deserves to be free and wild. Why so?
Well, I think inherently Asha's a wild animal. That's where she belongs. There's nothing about Asha's story that says I belong in captivity. She's never been in trouble. She spent most of her life in the wild. And so she has been first captured and taken into captivity because she crossed a boundary which she has no way of understanding. And frankly, I don't understand that well. She's doing what a wolf does, what most wild animals do, which is roam around looking for food. And then now she's being kept in captivity because she was unable to bear pups to give birth to pups. And I think that there's a lot of pretty dark layers to that as well. So I think Asha could be free first and foremost because she has an inherent right to be like all wild animals do. But secondarily, Asha is somewhat unique in that she has made this journey northward into wolf habitat twice. And we have a lot to learn from her, both from kind of a cultural perspective, why are wolves returning to where they once were? What routes are they taking? But also from a more scientific perspective, what are the wildlife corridors that they're following? What can we learn from Asha in the wild? And I think that's a lot more than what we can benefit from her being in captivity from.
Now, you mentioned we can learn something from Asha. What is it about wolves' migration paths that they naturally take that we can learn from?
Well, wolves travel very long distances, and during some of Asha's journeys, she was covering, I think, 30 or 40 miles a day. And they're not unique in that, but they're one of the most wide dispersing animals we have in North America. And so to see what paths they choose, to see what corridors they choose to follow, to see where they might be finding prey bases, I think that should inform both future wolf recovery efforts, because we want to see wolves from the Arctic Circle all the way down into Mexico eventually, but also other wildlife species as well, as we build human infrastructure, especially highways and renewable energy grids and things like that. We need to learn how wildlife can navigate those in order to ensure that we're not taking those corridors away, because those corridors are really important for ecological purposes, survival purposes, genetic purposes. So there's a lot to learn from Asha, both because she's a wolf and just because she has made this unique journey a couple of times.
What is it about Asha's story that you feel may have brought more attention to the Mexican gray wolf recovery program?
Oh, I think there's a lot of kind of courage and intrepidness in Asha's story. I mean, this is, again, a young female wolf who's kind of gone out on her own. She hasn't found what she was looking for in the Gila bioregion where she was at first, and she's gone on these adventures to kind of see what else is out there and to find a mate, find new habitat, find new areas to roam. And so there's a sense of adventure, I think, which I am attracted to, and which I think other people are. But also, this is a wolf who is returning to places that for many, many, many thousands of years had wolves, and only recent history has seen wolves absent from these landscapes. So I think there's a bit of a kind of a returning home story that Asha is telling as well. There's independent scientific papers that indicate that Mexican wolves need to be in places like the Sangre de Cristo Mountains or the Grand Canyon region in order to truly recover. And Asha is kind of enlivening those scientific papers. She's playing out theoretical science on the ground with a great story, as a charismatic species. So I think she captures the imagination of a lot of people who want to leave home, people who want to return to home, people who want to find adventure, people who want to try new things, people who just want to strike out on their own. And I think she's really compelling for all of those reasons.
Now, we've been able to learn more about migration that the wolves are taking through tracking devices. Can you share a little bit about how your organization has been able to study this and come to some of your conclusions on your efforts as well?
Yeah, so Wild Earth Guardians doesn't spend a lot of time in the migration and corridor space, but we are interested in it, of course, because we're interested in the survival of these species. But other organizations and both state and federal agencies also can learn a lot. Most Mexican wolves in New Mexico and Arizona have telemetry collars, so we know location pretty well, and we can track their movements. And that's pretty rare for a wildlife species. It's controversial in some cases, but when it's used for good, we have the ability to, as I was saying, kind of learn what kind of factors, what kind of elements, what kind of routes these kinds of animals are looking for when they do choose to disperse. And again, as we build more human infrastructure, and especially there's a concern and a focus on renewable energy generation, we want to make sure that we are not messing up further migration routes that have already been compromised. And Asha's ability to go north, crossing Interstate 40 several times, crossing Interstate 25 several times, is a little bit of a miracle, just because those barriers are so dangerous and so many animals get killed by cars. And so I think it can also inform efforts to create, overpasses and underpasses through highways, which are a focus of the state of New Mexico and a number of organizations right now, to create these more natural and historic wildlife corridors so that we aren't inhibiting that movement as much as we have historically.
We just have about 30 seconds left with you, but can you give us a brief reason why wolves are needed to be reintroduced in our region from your organization's perspective?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I mean, first and foremost, wolves have been here long before people like me have been here. They have an inherent right to be here, first and foremost. But second of all, they are really important to ecosystem balance, and wolves protect biodiversity, water resources, resilient ecosystems, and we need them on the landscape to play that role.
Chris Smith is with Wild Earth Guardians. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much.
That's it for this week's program. Remember, you can always stay updated with news anytime at krwg.org. I'm Anthony Moreno. We'll see you next time on Newsmakers.